If please put things in the chat. So please drop any questions into the chat if you would like to. We do have questions and we'll probably go off on tangents and wherever else we end up. But if there's a question that kind of fits in with what we are chatting about, then absolutely please just pop it in and I'll pick it up as we go. So yes, there we go. So welcome along, everybody. I'm letting everybody in as I go. Of course, you will know our special guest today, our in conversation with today is Dr. Tracy Bourne, and I'm so excited. I've been sort of slightly fangirling because Tracy is a big part of my thesis when I was looking at muscle tendon dysphonia
That's great.
in the musical theatre singing voice. So yeah, I've been writing your name for a good 5 years, and it's really lovely to meet you. So I'll just give you a little sort of intro to Tracy. If you don't know who she is, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you've read some of her research. But Tracy is a voice specialist and a researcher whose work focuses on the unique vocal demands of musical theatre performers. And the research that you have done, of course, bridges this clinical voice science and singing pedagogy. So it's bringing it all together, and with the emphasis on how understanding performers can maintain healthy, sustainable voices through demanding careers. And I think that's particularly pertinent for what we're doing here. So we're really interested in kind of building this understanding of vocal sustainability across performing arts, and particularly musical theatre. So, of course, we've got the work that you do, Tracy, is reflecting this kind of commitment to evidence-based approaches to vocal health, which I think is something that we're all interested in throughout our practice. But again, we're bringing it back to looking at these kind of this synthesis of maybe the other professionals, the sort of SLPs, like where do we fit in? Where does the musical director fit in? Where do the creatives fit in within this kind of training element as well? I'll be interested to bring that. So thank you so much for coming in. And I'm going to jump in. I've got about another page of introduction to you, but we'll cover it all as we go. So we're looking we're looking at what it takes to train, assist, and sustain a healthy voice in musical theatre. That's where we are. So thank you so much, Tracy, for coming in. Briefly, just to kind of kick us off, could you give us a little bit about your own kind of professional background and the current work that you do? Because I know you've shifted into a lot more tertiary work at the moment.
Yes, so I trained so many years ago as a classical singer because that was the training offered to me as a young performer, and then I went into acting training, and that then I went and did masters and eventually a PhD, which you've spoken about, which involved research, musical theatre vocal qualities, and looking at what's happening acoustically, what's happening physiologically, interviewing expert teachers, and working with singers and asking them what they think's going on. I also taught in a regional university in Australia for 10 years in the 2000s, and that was when I began researching because there really wasn't much in the way of a pedagogical background. It was an emerging field, I guess, and I felt that the students coming in were bringing in repertoire that I couldn't really help them with. So I wanted to learn more about how to help them, and I guess I felt that there wasn't much information out there. So then I moved to another regional area, and I've just very recently moved to Melbourne in Victoria, Australia, to teach at the Victorian College of the Arts, which is part of the University of Melbourne. And it's a tertiary course. There's 22 applicants in each year. It's a 3-year degree, and singer, actor, dancers do the course and then work in the professional industry. And Melbourne's it's the musical theatre capital in Australia, I would say. It's got a very lively professional music theatre scene. So that's what we're preparing them for in this course. So yeah, they come in as singer, actor, dancers, but with obviously different levels of skills. They can all sing, but their acting and dance training is, and they don't necessarily all sing to the same level, and they don't all sing in the same way. So some of them are strong belters, or some of them are had a really strong classical technique, and yeah, the dance training that they've had beforehand varies, and same with the acting. Yeah.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, now we've got a nice
Great.
bit of context. So that's where we are. We know where we are. And just for context, I am a lecturer at Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. So I'm kind of in the same level of HE, I guess, at that point. But I'll be really interested to see the differences between the
Mm,
Australian approaches or to be honest, the similarities, because that's really probably what we're going to be finding. Um, Great. So we are talking today about vocal sustainability, and before we go into kind of where the training fits and what we're seeing or what we would love to see or what we're not seeing, from your perspective as a teacher at that level and within these students, how are you defining vocal health and sustainability in musical theatre? That is, where is it? Where are you trying to sort of direct them, if you like? What's the end result for vocal sustainability?
well, I would love, by the end of the course, I guess I would love all of the singers to feel like they have strategies to manage their voice in all of the situations that they're going to find themselves in professionally. And that means being able to sing belt, mix, and legit. I mean, there's sub styles of all of those styles of singing, but you know that they, if the musical director says, "Can you belt that a bit more?" They have strategies for producing a sound that the musical director will be satisfied with, um, and that they can do long seasons. They can sing through a rehearsal period and into a show without getting overly fatigued. And they know how to manage their voice when they're feeling a bit, when their health's feeling a bit bumpy. So, yeah, that they've got strategies for managing their voice in all those situations.
And
I
in the
want them to
course,
sound good too, but I mean, in a way, if they're managing their voices really well, they will generally
then
be
they
sounding
will. Yeah,
fantastic
yeah,
as well. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in the course sort of setup that you have there, are there opportunities for them to develop that longevity, like that stamina? Because I tend to find where I am that they're not there within this sort of very crammed 3-year course. You kind of get to the end
Mm.
and then it's you're off. Yeah. Are there?
Well, I think it is a different environment from the professional environment.
Mhm.
I feel like some of the risks for them vocally within the course are that they come in quite young and quite inexperienced, and I think they don't know how to manage their voice generally.
Mhm.
Um, I think they're often, if I'm looking at the female identifying singers, and I'm going to say female singers actually, they generally come in as strong belters or strong sopranos. I'm going to say, like with the strong legit sound, they'll be
Mhm.
much stronger in one than the other. And it's really hard for them to sing in the style they're not familiar with, and that can be quite tiring, and they're not always good at managing the newer ways of singing. And for the male singers, it's upper register stuff. Usually they love to belt a big note at the top, even if they're not necessarily ready to kind of handle that. So it's sort of, I think early, actually all the way through, it's managing their expectations and managing their energy levels. And they sing a lot in our course. They do lots of group work in first year, ensemble singing. The longer rehearsal periods sort of happen later in the course, but they tend to be singing in lots of different situations through the whole week. Um, the I guess the thing is our terms are shortish. We have sort of 12 to 14 week semesters twice a year. So there's long holiday periods, and I worry a little bit about how much they're keeping their voice fit during the break. But
Yeah, I was
I think
going.
one of the other things I worry about is that they're not great at managing their energy levels in group contexts either. And actually, I think for music theatre singers generally, they can't hear themselves singing, like even in a rehearsal, if they're doing a
Mhm.
professional show, they're not going to hear their voice in the fold back, realistically.
Mhm.
So it's a thing for them to set up, and for young singers, that's really hard to know. When am I over singing in an
Mhm.
ensemble context? When I'm learning a song, how can I, not sing so loudly, or how can I manage the weight in my voice so that I can sing all the way through this 3 hour rehearsal?
Yeah, and so in terms of that, I was just going to jump into it's practice, like practice strategies and practice schedules, because from I have experienced a little bit, like exactly like you say, I've got guys who come in, they're great, but they just want to have a nice top G or an A, and they're really, and you're like, okay, but we've not got an E yet, so
Yeah,
let's go back to this.
yeah,
However, I am absolutely sure that they are sitting at home, you know pushing it along with everybody else that they're listening to, and
mm,
it's how to manage that, like you say, that expectation, but also that almost independence and autonomy to know, like, yes, I will get to this, but I have to be able to just manage myself a little bit. But I always wonder where that comes in training. Like, at what point is it in the one-to-one individual lesson? Is it watching other people and realizing, okay, well, I'm nearly there, but it's just an interesting bit of
mm.
training, I think, that I don't know if we approach enough. I don't know if we talk about it enough, if you get what I mean. Um,
I do.
I
I don't
think.
think we do talk about it enough, but I know that my colleagues in the course I teach in, we're all talking about it. But these singers have come in, particularly, I mean, more and more of them they're contemporary strong. I would say there's more strong contemporary singers than ever, which is what that's where
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
industry is at the moment. So that's fair. But the singers have been rewarded for belting with energy and singing loud. And it's really hard to convince them that that's not what it is, that it shouldn't be more effortful than speaking, is what I said. And if it feels like it's more work than talking, then you're working too hard. I mean, you can project your speaking voice and you can project your singing voice, but you shouldn't be shouting. And
Mhm.
yeah, I guess that's what I encourage them to do. And they go,
Yeah.
wow, yeah, I mean, not all of them, but for some of them, that's to think about singing as not the effortful pushing thing it takes a little while for that message to get in, even at
Mhm.
tertiary level, I think.
No, I definitely think, and it's perception versus reality is like a massive shock, I think, to a lot of them when
Yeah,
you explain, because I know obviously you've done a lot of this does fit in with your previous research on acoustic and perception and teacher perception and everything else, but student perception, when they hear something and they equate that much effort with the sound that's being produced, and you know that it's not, you know that it's essentially a cheat, or it's just an
mm,
acoustic variation that makes me think that you're doing this. That's not actually what's going on. And that part of it, I feel like, it's a bit generalized, but in training, it's so easy to skip over that and not, bring that in. So I'm just, yeah, it's
mm,
sort of light bulbed a little bit for me that maybe that's one area that should be looked at earlier on in training, as to what you hear is not actually what is going on. It sounds great,
yeah,
it sounds forceful and powerful and effortful, but actually I don't think you're not seeing what the mechanics are underneath that. But
yeah,
yeah, I'd be interested to think about how to do that across, all areas. But yeah, that's me. I'll just write that down. Things to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Um, make sure that gets done. Term one, right? Okay.
Yes, yeah, tick,
But
yeah,
yeah, tick, done that. Yeah, but I mean, and again, that not to you don't also want to pull back on the enthusiasm and energy and excitement and passion that all students have, and they were, I think we're talking, when we're chatting to Vesper about the role of social media, the role of TikTok, Instagram, teachers and performers kind of being on there and being inspirational and being, it's fantastic, such a good resource. And then what the balance is between what you see and what's actually
yeah,
happening, and where
yeah,
you are yourself in your ability. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a really very interesting. So just sort of linking on to that, then if we've agreed, right, we've sorted the world out now, they need to need to know that what you what you hear is not what you get. But in terms of like the technical foundations that you bring in, and I know these are it's essentially, of course, generalizing is difficult because everybody's completely different. But if we're thinking about technical foundations within first year, kind of into second year, potentially, for these quite young singers who are bringing in good voices, but that are not essentially grounded perhaps in
Mm.
technique that's going to carry them through to become sustainable voicing later on. What are your kind of main technical foundations that you bring in early on?
Yeah. Um, I, I, I think probably the first thing I do is get them to use their whole voice. I think, in the early lessons, it's let's explore all of the pitch ranges and all of the volumes, but
Mhm.
particularly pitch ranges, um, and really get, particularly for the confident belters, to really get them used to their head register, what's a comfortable place for them to sing in their upper range, and always, I mean, for female singers, I always begin lessons up there because that's where they're not using their voice most of the day. We generally speak in our chest register or M1, so I sort of warm them up there. So we would beginning in a lighter quality, I guess. Um, and for the men, it's yeah, generally sort of beginning in a lighter sort of space. And so I'm always trying to use both parts of the voice, and I mean, it reflects what the industry expectations are, but I think also it just encourages them to sort of move their voice. Um, I think it encourages freedom and flexibility and play, and yeah, so that's probably the first thing I do. As I've already said, I discourage singing at the loudest. They're only allowed to belt in one one place in their song, if at all. I'm often saying things like, I want you to take the volume back a notch or two, but give me more energy in the text, or articulate the consonants with more energy, but I want the volume back a little bit. I work a lot with uh, jaw release, tongue placement, really encouraging them to feel a space. I guess it's a resonant space that works for them, um, that gives them a sound um, that they can sustain over long periods of time. That's particularly for mix. But one of the things I've been thinking about since you asked me to do this talk is that the jaw and tongue setup is a really, really tricky. I just spend so much of my time on that with music theatre singers, and I think there's a bit of that different singers have different jaw shapes. This is what I'm coming to, and I think the jaw setup for the sort of mouth, it's not just the mouth shape, it's also where the jaw sits for belters and belt mixers is a bit different from where it sits for the sort of more classically based techniques, I would say, in male and female singers. Um, so helping singers find those sort of subtle adjustments in the middle so they can move between their registers if they need to, or what's the sort of setup for each for belt and for legit. So I use the word setup. I try to use that word rather than placement. Sometimes we talk about placement, um, and we they understand, I guess, the mechanisms of their voice, but I try to talk in terms of sensation, um, and how it feels for them, and I ask them how it feels. So that means that they're getting used to the feel of the setup, what
Mhm.
it's like for them in their bubble, rather than relying on sound too much, because that's when they're always relying on the external sound sort of gets them out there and pushing,
Mhm.
and yeah, and
Yeah.
alignment is the other thing. I'm just really big on alignment, and not in a sort of stuck way, but a sense that their head belongs to their body. I say that all the time. Your head belongs to your body. Your head belongs to your body. Okay, that's right. um, because they want to bring their head forward. I think it's partly about where they think the energy's going in the sound, and it's partly their way of trying to hear themselves in the room, or yeah,
Yeah, I think it's giving it, isn't it? Giving it, here you go.
that's right.
Have this.
Yeah,
There you are. Yeah, yeah. Love.
yeah.
And all of these, so sort of bringing everything together that you do, which sounds like also at the very beginning of your kind of approach to training, you are asking them to get more in touch with themselves, have a holistic awareness, and essentially find out who they are and what their voices can do first, which also strikes me as brilliant because they come in with having possibly had teachers that have gone, no, this is what you are. No, you are a belter. No, that's what you do. Or no, no, you're legit. Let's get you up there. You're always going to be. And then
Mm,
you sort of tend to find that there's potentially a shift where they go, oh, actually, it's a lot easier to do that, isn't it, than
yeah.
this setup that I've been positioned into. Because if they are 17 and you've been doing that in 15, 16, 17, when you're really malleable and you're really kind of susceptible to, okay, I'll please you and I'll get this right, then yeah, that I mean it's just a really lovely way of allowing them to know who they are. Um,
I think too, there's nothing more exhausting for a classically trained singer than trying to belt without having a good solid M1 chest register set up, without
yeah,
really understanding where that sits. And
yeah,
I think it's just as common for female singers to have vocal issues when they've come from that world where they're trying to adapt a classical technique without really understanding
yeah.
the M1 chest register setup. But similarly, belters who just trying to sort of push a really heavy kind of mechanism up to the top all the time, this sort of loudest, shoutiest kind of place, that's just as
Mm.
exhausting. So I think singers, particularly women, I guess, female singers need to be able to move through those parts of their voice, I think, in order to keep their technique healthy.
Yeah, I think that and linking to unnecessary tension as well, where we do, of course, need additional tension within different voice qualities and things change and muscle use changes, but not moving it into a place where it becomes maladaptation or into the point where it's then working against the voice. I think and these are big concepts for young singers to
Yeah.
kind of get their heads around, I think, as well. So it's a really lovely way of starting it. And I'm sort of just listening, going, that's a really, it is what we do, it is what I'm sure we all do, and we all look at
Mm.
all those things, but it's also the time constraints that you have in training, which uh, I feel like I'm always pushing to what's this week's performance? What is belt this week? Okay, great. And then next week, legit next week. Okay,
Yeah.
right, great. Yeah. And then, after that, is it rock and pop? Okay, I
Hmm.
see. So, you're kind of like, great. Um, where do we get the point to sit down? And maybe that's where the sort of training schedules or the idea of working this curriculum or working as a department and comes in, I think.
Mm.
So knowing that you do
Mm.
need that time to get to know your voice at the beginning,
Yeah.
that seems like the holy grail of being allowed
Yeah.
to have that time. But yeah, I think your point's really lovely that they do need to sit with it and find their bodies and know what's going on. Of course we do, but more time would be great. Um, yeah. So with that, in terms of vocal, I'm just sort of looking at this, thinking about fatigue because it does come up and well, for me, it does come up towards the end of first year and sometimes, a little bit when they're being quite intensive in first year, but certainly you can see it maybe in third year when we're at that point of about to be released into the world and we're really, really heavy schedules in terms of training. Might be a couple of shows they're doing, might be reels, it might be, getting themselves ready to go off. But in terms of fatigue, which can be good, but when it becomes overwhelming or it's lasting longer than we want it to, obviously then it's not great. Um, but in terms of that, what do you notice in training that leads to fatigue? So are there common behaviors? Are there common approaches to training? Are people doing too much? Are they, overusing? Are they over practicing? What have you seen? in your own?
Yes to all of that. I mean, there is some, like I say, I think ensemble rehearsals seem to be a tricky one where students often say to me that they're feeling tired after long ensemble rehearsals. Um, a lot of them have jobs as well that they do on weekends, and so they're working into the night, often in a bar or hospitality or something like that. And I think that's quite exhausting. I think they over warm up. Um, so
No.
they know they should only do 10 minutes. And I've heard some of them warming up before their lessons. And I'm horrified to hear them, you're right, trying to get those belt notes right. And it's like,
Before
it's
you get
okay.
in
Yeah, yeah.
the,
So they're sometimes tired before they get to the
yeah.
main business of the lesson or the class.
Mhm.
Um, so I think they also get physically tired, and that, like, sometimes they've been doing, a day of rehearsing, and there's been lots of dance. So um, I think the exhaustion's not just vocal. I think it's a kind of overwhelm and a physical tiredness from, yeah, trying to fit everything into their huge weeks. So what do we do? I mean, SOVT exercises are a big thing, and they all know about straws and um, um, doing all of those sort of things and resting their voice. I worry when I hear notes missing, or if they get sick. Yeah, I mean, there's all the usual things. So wear out, not a warm up. That's
Oh,
right. Don't wear yourself out before you get started. Um, I think one of the things I have been thinking about though is Ingo Tietze. I know he's a big SOVT person, but someone did once ask him about using SOVT warm-ups or for belt, and he was less favourable. I mean, he felt that they're quite good for, and this is just an anecdotal thing, but
mhm.
he felt they're quite good for mix, legit or soprano kind of, where you want
What they're
a
taking you
good
through the range
even,
easily, yeah.
yeah, where you
Hmm.
want a good even connection of the vocal
Hmm.
folds.
Hmm.
But I am not sure that, so if I've got a belter who's overworking or really, really over muscling, SOVT would be really helpful.
Hmm.
But for, let's say, someone who's not terribly familiar with M1, their chest register, I
Then,
definitely would not get them to do SOVTs. So for them, I
mhm.
might get them to do vocal fry or maybe humming, but even humming might not sort of get them the kind of closure
Mhm.
that they
Mhm.
want. Um, so yeah, for some really tired singers, they're tired because they've been trying to make big sounds with vocal folds that are not connecting
Yes.
adequately.
Yeah. And in terms of bespoke warm up, then because I've managed to get myself into a great hole, which is fine, I'm happy to be in it, but I make tiny bespoke warm ups for all of my students based on what they are working on, which does take a bit of time, but it means that they're small enough that I know what they're doing.
That's what you
What
guys
a nice
use.
teacher.
Well,
When
yeah,
you
well,
say
when you
nice,
say
what is
that, you
this? If
see,
I've
you
made a
know.
mistake,
Oh, there we go. Let's make that small. Um, yeah, I am a nice teacher, but then it gets me into this position where we have to update them as we go along, of course, and that's great. However, my aim in that is to get them into the sort of mindset that they should be designing their warm up for what they are about to do, not a generalized warm up from YouTube or something that they've seen. This, I like this woman, she's great. Do 10 minutes on it, and I'm kind of like, that's fantastic. But you're actually doing, you're doing get out and stay out from 9 to 5 at the moment, and I don't think that's going to get you to where you need to be for that particular, that range that we need. So I'm just wondering where that comes in terms of creating that kind of awareness and autonomy that they can go and select themselves and say, actually, that's what I need today. Like, is that part of a conversation, or is that something they just learn as they go along, you think?
I think it is. I think it's an early first year kind of
Hmm.
really early on
Yeah.
task. And our first years have their first assignment is to design a warm up and exercise. Like, what are some exercises that are good for warm ups, and then what are
Mhm.
some technical challenges that you're working on? What are the exercises? And they need to demonstrate those in front of their teacher.
And is that
So
more in a
that's
performance class kind of basis or for in one-to-ones? So that's just in their
yeah,
one-to-one sessions, yeah. Because it would
yeah,
be really useful to do that as a group as well, I would imagine. Quite a nice task
yeah,
to kind of
yeah, yeah,
share as well. Like I
yeah,
don't again sometimes I'm not aware of what's happening in other classes, when you're a one-to-one
yeah,
teacher, you're sort of
yeah,
on your own. But yeah, that's
yeah.
a nice task. Yeah.
And the singing technique in the course I teach in is structured so that first semester really is about foundations, and it is about getting to know yourself and your
Hmm.
voice, and then things get more challenging from there. And in first semester, actually, even acting classes are quite foundational,
Hmm.
and they're not really expected to do too much of that sort of multi-skill performance stuff really until
Yeah.
later first year, second year even.
Hmm.
That's something that things sort of get more complex as the course goes on, which I think
Hmm.
is important because they've got to learn what their instrument is really first. So warm-ups would be the warm-ups they do at the very beginning would need to then adapt as the
Yeah.
tasks get more
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's I mean it sounds like it's a very nicely designed kind of curriculum and approach that's going on within um, university at the moment.
Mm,
Anyway, it's really well considered. Whereas I think some of the approaches are more traditionally separate. If we've got this kind of
yeah,
separated, you do your singing here, then you've got dance, and then you're off to acting. And that's it. And I'm not really sure sometimes where they join up, where the warm up for acting, comes over, because obviously we've got speech into song and musical theatre. So where does that come in as a bit of
that's right.
training as well? And how do we
That's
throw
right.
that together?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see. So within University of Melbourne, when does that happen? When does that come together for you? When do you bring together those skills?
They start learning how to act in song officially in second semester, first year, and um, they do one song and they do it in a workshop. And it's not a class that I teach, but I've sat
Mhm.
in on that class.
Mhm.
And they're, excuse me, it's like they're given a process to go through, and
Mhm.
they go through that process, hand in the paperwork, and then workshop that in class as well. So they're just doing one, I think they do two songs, and they're really learning the nitty gritty of acting and singing at the same time.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
That's all right. And in terms of that, the speech into song element of it, which kind of it has come up related to chat about speech into song and where issues can happen when you're in a very emotive place, or you're in a different pitching place, or you're in that kind of
Mm.
extreme vocal place into song. Is that something that is tackled specifically, or is that something that they kind of pick up? I don't think it is
Um,
where I am, but yeah, I'd be interested
I
to know.
think it is. I don't know that there's a specific class for that. They do
Mhm.
speech classes as well,
Mhm.
with a voice acting teacher.
Mhm.
Um, I haven't really noticed it as an issue, I have to say, um, in terms of feeling like their voices are different when they're acting to when they're singing.
It's good.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it's because acting is taught as a sort of holistic thing in the
Yeah.
course that,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a sense that singing, it it feels it is in a different spot, especially if the pitch is sort of outside the
Mhm.
speaking range, but that the intention to sing comes from an acting place. I think
So
that's the idea.
they're being readied to know that that's how the transition is through the acting and characterization, rather than the technical or physical shifts, if you like. I
Yeah.
suppose if they are struggling with that, then say that that's a different element, different area to look at. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It's just come up with a couple of
I'm just,
students, I think, who were
excuse me, I'm going to get a
yeah,
drink
yeah,
of water. Hang on a sec.
it's all good. I am just going to preface what I was going to chat about because if you've watched a couple of these before, just while Tracy's getting her water, what I am interested in as well is where the awareness of vocal health comes in within training, basically because I have this is sorry, Tracy, I was chatting to myself there while you were
No,
I
I'm
was
listening.
okay, that's good. I'm really interested, yeah, where the awareness of vocal health comes in. So the reason why I'm really interested in this is because I think you get one or the other. I think you get people, I think you get students who are either super blasé, love, yeah, I should probably warm up, I'm like, but I did go out last night and it'd be fine. I'm just a little bit croaky. It'll be okay. It's fine compared to as soon as vocal health is introduced or we start discussing or we start looking into it a little bit or we get a bit of information, suddenly everybody's got nodules and and something is terrible at all times kind of thing. It's this almost extreme of it's fine, it's not no issues, or actually everything is happening to me right now. But I'll be interested to know where, in terms of vocal health in general, and this is more vocal hygiene, I guess, too, and being able to spot these warning signs, where fatigue has gone on too long, where we're missing parts of the range, like you say, where we're getting tired after a small amount of voicing, etc. Like, where does that come into training? Is it sort of front loaded within first year for you, or does it go throughout, or what's the sort of design there for you?
Yeah, I think it's all the way through, and I think there's some students that I inherited, or a student I inherited who had vocal issues in first year, and she was one of those classicals. She'd come from a classical background
Mhm.
and was really trying to overwork really to get a contemporary sound.
Mhm.
So she fixed up her vocal issues in a sense. She went to a speech language therapist and ENT and all of that. But she's always been really careful of her voice, but also having to participate in the course, which is a full-time course.
Yeah.
So in a way, her voice has had trouble catching up, if you know
Mhm.
what I mean. She's trying to
Mhm.
protect it and work
Mhm.
at it all the time. And she hasn't gotten sick again, but I would say that her technique has, it's been hard for her to manage her technique
Mhm.
because she's been trying to do two things at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a student who I've got in first year who had vocal issues in her last year of high school, and which were all sorted out before she came, and she was able to move through that fear quite early on in first year, and she'll be fine.
Okay.
So I guess it probably depends on the person and where we're able to address that.
Mhm.
So that's people who've had vocal issues who are then trying to sort of move on.
Mhm.
I think if I'm hearing huskiness in a singer, that worries me. If I'm hearing notes missing,
Mhm.
and if I'm seeing someone come in and they're just, physically exhausted or not speaking with enough energy, that's probably not so much. I'm worried about the vocal folds, but I'm just sort of worried about the capacity to bring the
General
necessary
capacity.
energy.
Yeah.
And this isn't a vocal health thing so much, but there are lots of complex anxieties and mental health concerns that students bring into the studio as well that affect how they can sing. And there's some days where someone's not able to sing because they're too fragile. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I think we were just well, I was going to I mentioned that when we were chatting earlier about our sort of role as everything to these students, and particularly in that environment where they've got one person that they know is going to be there every week. And for me, it feels like even your instrumental teachers are not there. It's not consistent. It's not every single week, but your voice teacher will be there and will know what's going on because, of course, you've got that emotional link that's coming in, whether you want it or not, or whether it's something that would be more helpful if we get on to this little bit of technique, but actually that's not going to happen today because let's
Mm,
look at, what else is happening, what other support do you need, etc., which puts us into a different situation than some other teachers, especially in group training, I would
Mm.
suggest, I think. But it also puts us into a fantastic position, I think, because you've got like a really good connection and you can help,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
as you get to know so well. So it's a difficult balancing act, that I would definitely say. Yeah, but and very privileged to be able to do it, I think, is the key
yeah.
to that. But yeah, but it relies a lot on knowing what's going on across a wide range of issues and areas, which does sometimes make
Mm.
us jack of all trades, and need that extra
Yeah.
support, I think, in training. Yeah. Um,
It's a fine line, isn't it? Because I agree with you, and I really try not to talk too much in lessons. Try to do as much as we
mhm.
can, get them doing things, so that they experience the change in their technique rather than us talking about it too much. So when personal things come up, I'm often thinking, well, I want to be careful to sort of keep that boundary
Mhm.
there, an appropriate boundary, but also I'm here to teach them singing and I care about them. But yeah, but sometimes problems are too big, aren't they? And we just need
Well,
to
that's
make
it. To
space for
get to
that.
the singing, how do you, yeah, what's the next bit? And that's a
That's right.
wider conversation, I think, on which we have we've got a little strand actually where we're looking at kind of mental well-being, physical well-being, that side of training and sustainability within musical theatre, which I think could quite happily span the training session and for the performer who is there out there on their own doing this and can also need that one-to-one connection in some way, whether it be a therapist, or a teacher who can then refer on, or wherever we are. But that does actually link back to when you were talking about vocal health. Is there a screening process where you are? And this is quite a controversial one because I think there have been screening programs before previously in different internationally in different
Mm.
universities. But yeah, you don't have any screening or any questioning.
No, no, there's not. The students can have access to a speech therapist if they need to, but yeah, they're not screened.
No, so nothing, no scopes or nothing to, yeah, before they come in, which is,
No.
yeah, quite an interesting. I'd be interested to know what other people feel about that as a potential. Yeah, don't even, yeah, I can't even think how you would implement it, but there you are. It is done in lots of different places,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it's out there
I
as well.
I think yeah, it would be helpful, and I think even for the healthier singers, it'd be like a great kind of this is your baseline when you're well. This is what you're like coming in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and that bringing it back to that, what is my voice? Where does my voice actually sit when it's all working and it's easy and there's nothing wrong? What do I sound like and who am I? Which I definitely think we don't always have time to find out,
yeah,
within the
yeah.
time we've got. I've got a question from Annabella, which is, can I ask what your thoughts are about training and singing classical technique and singing modern contemporary rock and pop at the same time? So some teachers say it isn't possible and some say it is. What do you think? Some advice, and thanks for your time. Which is a really good point because obviously in musical theatre you could be going from either show
Mm,
to show or within training you're working on very almost to classical technique. I mean, the pseudo classical technique of kind
yeah.
of that budget setup. Yeah. So what do you think about doing this at the same time, or do you keep it separate?
I think in training it's a really good idea, but it might be that the singer is always going to be like their home base will probably be one or the other, but that we're always moving between the two. I think it's really important. And I think it's important all the way through. Like if you're doing a show that's a contemporary musical, Beetlejuice, let's say, because it's Australian, Australian American, but written by an Australian. Um, I would say, even though that's a very contemporary show, I think it's real. I would be encouraging my singers to use to not maybe not do classical rep, but I'd be encouraging them to sing warm-ups that they would do for legit as well, but end in the place that they need to be singing in. I think it's part of, like, if you're an athlete, you're not going to just be using the muscle group that you use. I think you need to keep your whole body fit and healthy and stretching all your muscles. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I definitely do both, and I think it's really important that singers just get used that that's normal. They understand the setup for the classical-ish world. I agree, it's not really classical, it's influenced by
Or,
classical
yeah.
and contemporary styles, that the setups are they're moving between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that flexibility, though, isn't it? It's that ability to return to home, or to not know that you're stuck somewhere, or something's gone too far, or taking you out of that ease as well. Yeah, I think that's, yeah. I'm of the same opinion, if that helps you.
Great.
Everybody else. Um, and Heather's popped a question in, which it says, I'd be interested to know how many of these factor into audition process for these courses. This is back to do with health issues, I think, Heather, the
Mm.
vocal health. If someone auditioning has obvious vocal health issues, would that impact the chances of getting onto the course? How about their resilience and their ability to take feedback and adapt? Is this tested in any way during the audition process? I can just say, Heather, I audition, I'm on the panel and I do take it into account, but I put a note which says I have concerns about the vocal health at the moment of this applicant. And then that kind of goes on into, if they get through to the next round, then that would possibly be part of the interview, not in a prying way. You're not allowed to obviously ask tell me everything that's happened in your voice, but that does get noted from my point of view, because I feel that it's my responsibility to note if I feel, if I can hear there's something really not working. Um, what about you, Tracy? What on the
Yeah.
course is what you're saying?
I'm not involved in auditions, but one of my singing colleagues is, and he's definitely listening out for that. So yeah, there are over 500 people auditioning for 22 places in our course. So I think if someone had vocal issues that sounded like there was big vocal issues, I think that they probably wouldn't get through. And I think that's, yeah, I would worry about someone with serious vocal health issues going into an intensive course. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think also there's the side of things, even with successful applicants who have previously had vocal issues, like you say, there's always that little level of worry, it's always that little holding back potentially, or concern that sort of permeates through the learning, which they should not be stopped learning, of course, for that. But then you'd have to take that into account and make sure that they're really supported through that process, which fantastic work for them to put themselves in that position and almost push through to where they want to be. But it is a very careful holding of those singers,
Yeah.
I find.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Gosh, right. We have chatted for so long. I'm aware I don't want to take up too much of your time. We've gone right over our 45 minutes with exciting chat about vocal sustainability, and I feel like a well placed to change an entire curriculum right now. Yeah, do that later on. Have we got any more questions from our fabulous audience, or anything else you would like to chat about? Millie would love to know some thoughts or strategies on training the middle of the voice for Spazio, I think, especially for young female voices at university. And I think you chatted about SOVTs earlier being potentially useful in there. Is there anything else that are your kind of go-tos, or your strategies that you like for
Um,
Spazio?
I think a lot in terms of registers. So I'm thinking, and the sort of way I think about registration is laryngeal mechanisms M1 and M2. So that's something that French voice scientists really have done quite a lot of work on, and that's, I think there's quite a few Australian and I think in the UK and US now as well, that's quite common to use M1 for chest register and M2 as a way of looking at how the vocal folds function underlying those registers. So that's the way I think about uh, registers, and what we're doing with female singers who have to sort of adjust the way that they're using their registration in the middle. I would work from the top down and from the bottom up. So we're working on bringing M2 down and then blending that, I guess, or adjusting M2 as the singer's going down in pitch. But also that they can bring M1 or their chest register up to as high as they can comfortably without shouting, and then to be able to blend that up. So when I say blend, they're using resonance strategies really to do that. So that's really the sort of way I was talking about finding the right setup for their jaw and their tongue, that we're really trying to sort of use that legit placement and also a more sort of contemporary
Mm.
setup. I'm sure that's right. We're just sort of moving in both directions, because some songs require that sort of belt mix, and some songs require a more ballad mix, and some need a lot of legit. So we're trying to sort of get that coordinate. It's a coordination thing, really, I think. I'm not sure if that answers your question because that's like a
Big,
really practical
yeah,
thing. There's a
yeah.
whole lot of exercises and processes we'd go through, but that's my thinking anyway.
Yes. So you could adapt to that, hopefully, Millie, that will give you an idea. Yes, to bring it. I think I spend most of my day going, but this, so we're going to do this. And a lot of it is yeah, especially for the boys as well who want to do the
That's
same.
absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks, Millie. That's a great question. And yeah, I lots of things I would like to keep asking you about, but we would be here all day, and it makes me it just ignites all of the possibilities as to trying to make sure that we have the ingredients that we need within the training, kind of, the initial training. It really fires me up to thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? How can I adapt this? But how can we adapt this on a bigger scale, I think? And I think from these three conversations that we've had, we get an idea of what it's like to be out there, but also what it's like at the very beginning, and what do we need to do as educators at that point, and how can we kind of adapt what we're doing. I think it's just fantastic. So it has been brilliant to have you here, and thank you so much, Tracy. Just
Thank you.
so grateful for you coming in. Thank you everybody for coming along to listen. And I know there'll be lots of people watching this on catch up. So please reach out. We've got more research coming. We've got another strand coming up. We're looking at dance. We're looking at embodying. So that'll be really interesting. There's more research coming out looking at dancing and singing at the same time. And it's such a critical bit of MT, which they're just expected to just do. That's what I
That's
think.
right.
Just get on
That's
with it
right.
and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Not always as easy as that, but fab. Right, thank you so much. I'm going to stop our recording there and
Thank
say
you.
it's been brilliant to chat to you. And we'll hopefully see you again soon on another
Thank you.